So now today we're going to talk about money. We're going to talk about money. We're talking about podcasts and money and how simple it can be. And truly, my friends, it really is crazy that the truth of the matter is that I come downstairs, I turn on Zoom, right? That's how I podcast. And I have a microphone, and that has added multi-seven figures to my life every year. That's unbelievable. Like, really think of it. Like, when in the history of mankind, not only did that exist, but did anything exist like that, where you could scale your income in that way, that easily? I really don't think anything can be easier. And by the way, people will say, like, I get writer's block, right? You've heard that. How often do you hear people say, like, I got talker's block? It's easier to podcast. And how often do I not turn on the camera on my Zoom because I'm recording a solo episode and I don't want the camera on? Or how often when I'm recording with a guest, does the guest say, yeah, I'm in my sweats today, don't use the video, let's just talk? So we don't have to be camera ready. We don't have to be like polished. It doesn't have to be that your words are scripted and edited. It's amazing. It's a gift. And I'm here to scream it from the rooftops. Every person really at this point should be starting a podcast. A, just to get your voice heard. B, whatever business you have, whatever brand you have, whether you have a product-based business, even if you don't have a business, if you just want your podcast to be your business, it's all arrows point to you should be doing a podcast. Like, can you afford not to have a podcast right now? I think the answer is no. We'll talk about that later. So I told you that we were going to talk to you about the 5 ways that you could monetize a podcast. Did I? I did. Well, guess what? We over here at Team Kathy Heller, we like to under promise and over deliver. So we're actually going to teach you 8 ways that you can monetize your podcast. So who's excited? I'm excited. All right, so let's start. So in no particular order. And remember, what did I tell you? I told you we made you workbooks. So if you are taking your own notes, fantastic. But best believe we will email you afterwards with not only a link to the replay, but we've been emailing you these workbooks. Have you guys been reading your workbooks? Type a little 1 for me in the chat if you have checked out these workbooks, because Colleen does such a fantastic job helping me create the curriculum, putting them together, designing them, and they're awesome. And they've got good notes in them. So if for some reason you don't get all the notes taken, you're going to get your workbooks if you are signed up for this challenge. If for some reason you think you're not signed up, go to kathyheller.com/bootcamp. But if you had signed up through that, you will be getting these workbooks. Okay, awesome. All right, so we're going to dive in now. So the very first way, and we're just going to kind of roll this out. This is not in order of like most important or least important. We're just going to kind of give you, these are the 8 ways that we know of that you can monetize a podcast, and we'll go into as much detail as we can. Okay. So here is way number 1, advertising. You guys have heard about this. Now, I want to get into this a little bit because this is the one where most people think this is what begins and ends what you can possibly do, right? People are like, sponsors, right? Isn't that how blogs make money? It's through sponsorship. So that must be, right? People think radio, people sell ads, TV, they sell ads. So people think like that's the short and the long of it. Is really not. Actually, that's the smallest piece of the revenue that I make, but it is still significant, right? I still at this point make hundreds of thousands of dollars from podcasting advertisement, but let's talk about what that looks like. So in podcasting, we call it a CPM. Have you ever heard that before? CPM. CPM stands for a cost per millionth. A millionth is a word that means 1,000. Okay, so for every 1,000 downloads, there is a fee that you will be paid by a sponsor. We have 211 or so sponsors, everyone from Casper Mattress to Blue Apron and Skillshare, and we have so many, Rothy's Shoes, we have so many sponsors. So what the sponsors will do is they will say, okay, how many downloads do you get per episode in the span of about 60 days? And they'll sort of take a snapshot of 60 days. They'll say, how many downloads do you get? And you can tell them how many downloads you've been getting the last couple months. And they'll use that as like a That's fair information. And then based upon the downloads you just got over the last 2 months, they'll sort of assume that might be the downloads that you'll get over the next 2 months. And they'll say, great, we will pay you this CPM. The CPM is anywhere from $25 to $50 per 1,000 downloads. So let's just do some easy math. Let's say that you had 10,000 downloads of a podcast, right? I told you now, I'm very impressed by it myself, that my podcast has 24 million downloads total, about 1 million downloads a month. Okay. But let's say you're like, Kath, that seems far off. Okay. So let's start with something like super, like we can grasp the number 10,000, not 24 million, not 1 million, 10,000. So see if you can do the math with me. If you had 10,000 downloads of a podcast, okay, now this is not a day. This means if you had 10,000 podcast downloads of an episode over 60 days. So how many 1,000s is in 10,000? Who can know that math? So 10, right? So there's 10 1,000s in 10,000. Yeah, we're all, you with me still? You're with me. I know you're like, no one said there'd be math. It's 10 a.m. on the West Coast. I know we can do it. We keep it together. Keep it together. Okay. So then you would, let's say that we said the cost per millionth, right? Every sponsor has a different cost per million. Yvonne is getting it. So Yvonne, you need to cheat on her page. You need to look what her answers are, because she's the one to look at. So if the CPM, every sponsor has a different understanding of what they want to give. Let's say they want to give you the lowest, which is $25 per every 1,000. And you had 10,000 downloads in the span of 60 days. So how much would you get for that ad? There's people getting this, Colleen. I'm amazed. I'm impressed. It's $250. Okay, but let's check this out. So on my podcast, this is sometimes at this point, it's annoying, I have to say, how many ads we have, Colleen. You know that sometimes I find this frustrating. We get about 4 ads an episode, okay? But let's say you had 3 ads per episode, and let's say you only did 1 episode a week. If you did 3 ads times $250, who knows how much that is? Who can do the math? Now, if you did 1 show a week, okay, now I'm a crazy, I started doing 1 show a week, then I did 2 shows a week for 3 years. And then only this year I started doing 5 shows a week, but we now cut back to 2 because who needs it? But still, even when I was doing 5 shows a week, I wanted some of those shows to be clean. So I still only sold ads in 2 of the episodes a week. I never was allowing us to sell ads across every episode. It's too much, too many ads for me. So if you had 3 ads and you only did 1 episode a week, 3 times 250 is, yes, you guys can do, you can count. I'm so proud. This is a good class. 750. Now, if you did 1 podcast with 3 ads a week, how much money would you make a month to do this podcast? Who can know? 750 times 4, right? You do 1 episode a week. So it's about $3,000. All right. So can you get advertisers? The answer is yes. If you do some research, you're going to find out that for advertisers to give you $250 to talk about Rothy's shoes, to talk about, like I said, Casper, Blue Apron, Warby Parker, this is so little money for them. And here's what it is. The ROI, the return on investment that they see from micro influencers. I'm talking somebody who has a small following. They see that the return on investment is off the chart. What they also see is that where they used to spend money, TV advertising, their ROI is down in the most unprecedented way. Because why? What do people do now when they watch TV? They don't want to watch the ads, do they? They just want to fast forward through the ads. They've either like pre-recorded, DVR, whatever. What do people have today? They don't DVR. I am not up to speed. But the point is, because the advertising dollars for them are so inexpensive in podcasting, there is a world of brands that love working with people, and they'll be happy. They'll be happy to do that, which is why we have to turn people away. We have too many sponsors at this point, and it starts to be something where I think there needs to be a healthy balance. So advertising, CPM, $25 to $50. You had 10,000 downloads, right? You're getting the math. Is that helpful? Does that help? Okay. So advertising, but that's just where we begin, folks. So we said 8 ways. So what's the other way? And by the way, before I keep going, Colleen, she's so humble and pretty and nice and smart, just sitting there. Colleen, do you have anything to say about advertising before I move on?
Yeah, I just want you guys to know that like Kath said at the beginning, we often think of advertising as, oh, podcast, that's how I'm going to make my money. But you're going to see in these next 7 that I don't want you feeling like, oh, so it's going to take me how long to get there till I can earn money? All of these other 7 we're going to talk about are things that you can start right away, and they're not dependent or contingent on the size of your audience.
Yes, very, very true. Okay, so now what else can you do? Well, you can offer extra content. Well, what does that mean? It means that, let's say you're doing a podcast episode, but you want to do an extra episode that's only for people who become a patron of your podcast, who are part of your sort of insiders, part of the people who really want to support your show. Remember on PBS, they're like, for viewers like you who support what we do, PBS, right? And you get to see Mr. Freaking Rogers. Not bad, not bad. So what might be the extra content for those patrons of yours, right? You understand that the people who supported PBS, they used to get extras. Maybe they would get like a water bottle sent in the mail. Maybe they would get to come to some event or something like that. But we now understand that Patreon, have you guys ever heard of Patreon? Do you know how much Patreon pays out in a month? What's the amount of money Patreon is estimated to pay out for the people who are making money by people being patrons? The answer is 1.8 million a month in payouts. Okay, so if you had 100 people in the world who decided to be patrons of your podcast, who decided to pay you $10 a month, maybe because they just get some little extras, maybe you answer their questions, maybe you send them BTS behind the scenes videos of you, maybe every time you do a podcast, you save 5 minutes at the end where you ask questions from your patrons to your guests, and just those questions, just that extra 5 minutes goes to your guests. Maybe you do special lives or meetups for those people. Maybe you make them workbooks, who knows? But if you had 100 patrons who gave you $10 a month, that's an extra $1,000 a month. If you had 500 people who gave you $10 a month, you'd be earning $5,000 a month. How many of you know a woman, she's a songwriter, her name is Amanda Palmer. Do you guys know Amanda Palmer? So Amanda Palmer is one of the most famous people to do any kind of Patreon crowdfunding kind of a thing. She makes $50,000 a month on average from about 15,000 people in the world who pay her $2 to $3 a month. Now, some people pay her a little more, some people, $2 to $3 a month is the average, $2 to $3, okay? So that's something to consider is, are there people, could I, over the span of like 3 months or 4 months, could I make an appeal that I have this extra thing to give, and in exchange for $10 a month, I start to feed people this extra goodness? It's significant. It adds up. Okay. Anything you want to say about that, Colleen, before we move to number 3?
Yeah, I just love the fact that people are there and they're listening to your podcast because they love what you're doing. So it might seem like, oh, just $10 a month, but it adds up quickly because it's an easy, accessible amount for people to just hand over to get an opportunity to soak up more of you and more of your world. And it doesn't take a lot of your bandwidth with the ways that Kathy was talking about in order to produce that extra content. So it's a really accessible way of starting to monetize and give people that chance to say yes to more from you.
Yeah. And one thing I want you to write down, because gosh, do I see people who are so in scarcity mindset that I think you need to hear this from me. I think you could use hearing this every day. So maybe you make a Post-it note. The money's there. The clients are there. The audience is there. The customers are there. The money is there, right? People tend to think that nobody would do that. Nobody, it's like, if you look at actual data, right? Especially if you look at our country, we live in a place where people love spending money. We love spending money. And guess what we know about Gen Z? Okay, well, what do we know about these millennials? What do we know about the world? What do we know about actually everyone who's alive right now? What's the thing that we see in consumer habits spend? When the habits of consumers, do you know what people spend the most money on? Growth opportunities and experiences. Write it down. That's what people spend the most money on. Isn't that amazing? You know why? Because products, right? Products are everywhere, right? There's not that much of a sort of this like novel, oh my God, it's like you can get that on Amazon. You can search it, you can get it right now, right? But experiences, things that make us feel less alone, things that help us grow. We are at a place, thank God, in our evolution of it as a species where we want that now, right? We want the next level. We want quantum shifts. We want to grow. We want to connect with one another. So what do you notice? You've probably been someone who's already done this. Maybe in your life, you have paid $12 for an album, but how much more did you pay to go to the concert? Did you pay 12 bucks? If you bought a Paul Simon record for $12 or you bought the single for $2, you didn't spend that to go to the concert, right? The concert, which was an hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever it was, you might have spent $90. You might have spent $180, depending on where you had a seat. And you were proud of it because that experience was like life-changing. So instead of being convinced of something that's a lie, which is nobody's there, no one will pay, not true. In fact, if every single person who's in this boot camp right now, there's, I don't know, over 10,000 of you, if you all started a podcast and you all had all your listeners paying you, you still wouldn't be able to serve the amount of people who want to pay you, the amount of people who are there. There's almost 7, 8, 9 billion people. How many billions? 8 billion people in the world. There aren't enough of us to even serve everybody, right? So that's how many customers are there. That's how many people are lining up who want to spend the money, who want to pay you, but you have to do the thing, which is step all in to that vibration of being a leader and open your hands to receive people, to welcome people in, and to then show up and lead your way through it and connect and corral people and motivate or whatever it is, or entertain or be silly or do the come with me, all of that, they are there for you. Who's getting this? All right. So the third thing on the same note is creating a membership. How many of you have ever heard of a membership? Type a 1 in the chat if you have. How many of you are part of a membership? So that's something that I have done. Right now, we have this thing, it's an alumni membership, so that's not open to the public, but I've done other kinds of memberships in the past. I've been in people's memberships. Okay, so you guys have heard of that. Well, memberships are an incredible way that you can also make money with your podcast. And I have friends, my friends, Krista and Lindsay, who have a podcast called Almost 30. Their membership is off the hook. I think that that's the biggest way that they monetize their podcast. And they call it like Almost 30 Nation, right? It's like all the girls who listen to that show. Because why? We want community. We want to be connected. And so we want that intimacy. Goes back to that intimacy. So yeah, maybe you do a podcast, but then if people are listening to your podcast consistently and they're listening week after week, do you think that they might want to connect with other people who also listen? Do you think that they might want more of that sense of community with people who have similar values and needs and interests? 100% yes. I met my husband at a study class where we were talking about Jewish mysticism. And when people say to me, oh, how did you guys meet? It's so hard to meet someone. I'm like, go somewhere where other people have similar interests than you do. You'll probably meet someone you like because doggy, your dog's barking. You'll probably meet someone you like, right? So if you're really interested in golf, or you're really interested in history, or you're really interested in helping kids in Africa, and you have a community of people who are all there for that, chances are you're going to meet friends and people that you have a lot in common with, right? They say soulmates or goalmates. I think friends usually have a lot of the same core values and interests, right? So this is where a membership could be really lucrative. You can start a membership that's $47 a month. You could start a membership that's $97 a month. It could be $18 a month. You can play with it. You can start it at one rate. You can always change it after that. You can give people sort of one rate and then they get legacied into that rate, but you could still raise it for other people. So you could have founding members. You could even have an initiation fee, right? And what could you do in that membership? Well, you could give them maybe extra content. You could actually maybe facilitate Zoom hangouts where they meet each other. You could even do in-person hangouts now, right? You could do it safely. You could do it outside. You could bring in extra speakers who come in, who you interview on Zoom. And again, do you have to be an expert to create a community? No, right? My friend Jacqueline Johnson, she created a program called Create and Cultivate, where she at the time was really interested in entrepreneurship and she knew other girls like her. So she wanted to create this space for females to talk about entrepreneurship. So she gathered her friends spur of the moment in Palm Desert. And they were like, she's like, this will be our inaugural one. And then she started creating these events. And sure enough, she started asking people, would you come speak or would you give away swag? Because that's great exposure for those people. You wouldn't believe what you could do with a membership. I have another friend who's really into DIY crafting, and she had a podcast all about DIY crafting. And then she started a membership all about that. So every single week they would get on Zoom together, they would craft a little something. Sometimes they would have a speaker come in and talk about a certain kind of way that you can do stenciling or whatever it was. People loved it. Do you know the world that goes on, let's say, in the scrapbooking world? It's insane. My friend Amy Tan, she's in that world, and you wouldn't believe how deep that world goes and how people I just talked to Pat Flynn the other day, who has a podcast, and he was talking about how he's so into Legos, and there's a whole bunch of communities out there that he's a part of that are Lego communities just for adults who love Legos. People pay to be a part of those. Colleen, anything else that you want to say about memberships now that your dog has stopped interrupting the launch?
No.
I need to talk to your dog. Let's
so
talk.
rude. So rude. I think what I love so much about memberships, you guys, is it's the energy that you get to be in when you're with like-minded people in that part of your journey. It's so incredibly powerful because not everyone in our life understands those specific interests we have or has the same level of passion about them that we do. So it's an incredibly beautiful opportunity you give people when you create that space for them to come together and connect.
Yeah, she's right. And we talk about holding that space a lot, but truly, if you guys looked before the pandemic at what the rate of sadness was, just even in our country, the number one reason people gave for feeling sad, this is before COVID, was feeling alone. Because, and again, I mentioned Dear Evan Hansen, which is coming out this weekend, but Dear Evan Hansen is actually partly a show about social media and partly a show about, it was a Broadway show first, that's why I'm calling it a show. It's partly a conversation about how you can feel that you have a million people in your life and you can still feel more alone than ever because there's this illusion that there's people in your life, except you're not actually having meetups and conversations. You're just kind of liking each other's stuff, right? Or not liking each other's stuff. So when people are in community and they actually connect and they meet people who have common interests and they have real conversations and someone facilitates that, it's everything for people. They feel there's a lifeline. So that's what Colleen is talking about. Okay, number 4 is offer something that you create. So if you have a physical product you make, if there's something that you want to be making, you can leverage your podcast. An example is if you paint and you have a podcast about creativity, you could sell your paintings. If you make jewelry, your podcast could be also about jewelry design, right? Or the business of making jewelry, but you could be selling that. I have a friend who she has a really fun podcast, and there are certain things that she tends to say on her podcast. And one of them is you're not alone. And another one is, I am enough. She always tells her audience, I am enough. Say that to yourself. Well, she makes a ton of products, right? She makes a ton of products where, you can go into Redbubble and you can go onto all these different sites and you can put little things that you say on the podcast. Literally it takes you 10 minutes to do the art setup. They do it for you. And then you can have a page where people will buy for Christmas. Let's say they already like your podcast. They associate those words with you. So it has even more meaning for them. And there's a journal with what you say on the top of the journal. these are ways that people will support you. And they'll like come to you at a certain point. They'll be like, do you have anything else? Right? Like, we like to merch up. Like, we like this stuff, like think about habits of people, think about what the data shows. So something that you create, you could sell, right? But if you create other kinds of things, you can also sell that as well, right? Like, we'll talk more as we go about experiences and things like that. Number 5 is an ebook or a course. So I mentioned the other day, my friend Danielle Silverstein, who was a listener of my podcast, she got scrappy and messy and brave and started a show with her husband, Adam, called Marriage and Martinis, which completely took off and is making them tons of money. Not to mention it saved their marriage and saved so many other people's marriage. We talked about her. Well, the way that it's making money so far, this is the first way they went to monetize, is they created an ebook. And it wasn't like, here's a book of pages and pages of paragraphs. It was literally a list of questions that they could ask, that people who were listening could ask their spouses, because they said, well, maybe people would like that, right? So you could do that. So there are a lot of topics related to your podcast that you can turn into an ebook. You could turn it into an online course. If your podcast is about knitting, it could be about learning to knit. If you talk about chess, you could be helping chess players improve their chess moves. So if you had 50 human beings who took a $500 class from you, how much money is that? It's $25,000 in income. I'll tell you that the very first time I had any experience with a podcast, it was actually me going on other people's podcasts. And I was, for 10 years before I was a podcaster, I wrote music for TV shows and movies. I wrote music, I told you, for movies like I just said the wrong thing, TV shows like Pretty Little Liars and Switched at Birth. And I wrote a bunch of theme songs for different Netflix shows. In any case, I was asked to be on music podcasts. I did like 4 of them. And it was my first experience with podcasts at all. And people were like interviewing me. How did you do this? How did you build your career? And would you believe, one of the listeners, I was on 4 podcasts, meaning one singular time on 4 people's different podcasts. One of them was the CD Baby podcast. And they asked me, how did you DIY your career? And I got email after email just from listeners from just being on once. And one of those listeners sent me an email and said, could you do a class on what you just talked about? And I felt like lightning struck right down, because I had never thought of doing that. And it changed my entire life, because I decided, what if I did do it? And this is when I was pregnant with Maddie. This is before I had my own podcast. This is the summer before she was born, or the spring. And I thought, well, I have this like deadline, this baby's coming, maybe I should do an online class. And I didn't really know exactly how I would teach it. But the fact that I did this episode and people were so interested that they wanted to hear more, I said, I'm just going to do it. And I'm going to do it the way I do everything else, messy. And so you guys, I did a webinar, and that's what I was told it was called. And how many slides do you think were in my webinar? 0, because I didn't know how to do that. And it wouldn't have been me. I'm very much myself, if you can't tell. So I did it the way I'm doing this, except I probably wasn't nearly as confident. I was about 40 pounds heavier because I was pregnant, and it was hot, and I wasn't looking as fly. You know what I'm saying? But I just did 1 hour, just straight to camera. And I showed up and I talked to songwriters about how they could songwrite for film and TV. And it was a free workshop. And at the end, I offered them a class, and I didn't know what I was doing. So I said, it'll be a year long. I mean, I thought that was a gift. People are like, no, could it be shorter? Like, I don't want to take a year-long class. Anyway, I was like, it's a year, it's $1,000 for the year. So it's $100 a month if you pay it in full, or it's whatever, it's $97 a month. I didn't know what I was doing, but I just did it, and I'm myself. So I think some people, again, you're never going to be everyone's flavor, right? Am I right? I mean, you could be Jerry Seinfeld. People are like, not into you. And you're like, you're a psycho. How do you not think he's funny? Some people are like, not funny. Not funny. Okay, easy there. So some people are not my people, but for the people who like me, they're like, I think she's really genuine. I want to learn from her. Let's do this. Well, guess what? At the end of that very first webinar, if you can call it that, it was literally me talking to the camera, to these people just like this. How many people do you think signed up for my class? How many people? The answer is 147. So that night, Amira, you were in my class. And now she's become a friend of mine. She was in that class. It was called 6-Figure Songwriting. And I said, I'll teach you everything I know. And I made $147,000 that night. And I couldn't believe it. And the best part was that, and Amira knows, she was in my class. Within a few months, we had certain students who called me up and said, oh my God, I just got my very first song licensed to this TV show. Oh my God, one of our students who went on to actually help teach in the class years later, right away, he was like, I just got a song in a Starbucks commercial. I just made $52,000. He was crying, a grown man crying. And I said, how cool that this is working. And guess what happened next? One of my students in that class, Amy, said, she texted me and said, you should start a podcast. And that's actually how I started the podcast. And funny enough, the synchronicity, she introduced me to this woman named Maddie, who she said might have some mentoring to give me on how to start a podcast, because Maddie sells advertising for podcasts. And she's like, I happen to know this woman. She's brilliant. You should meet her. So I met her. And guess what? I had just had a baby a week earlier who I had just named Maddie. So it felt like really synchronistic. And Maddie said, you should start a podcast. I will tell you, you're probably going to need at least 10,000 downloads for me to get involved and sell ads for you. And I'm like, 10,000? Can my mom log in from 10,000 IP addresses? Like, I'm never going to make it. But sure enough, I did. And Maddie to this day sells my advertising. And I was offered, since then, she knows, I've been offered to go to Wondery, Podcast One, all these podcast networks have come up and wined and dined me and offered me all this like money and stuff to come. And I'm like, I don't need no podcast network. I got Maddie, I got Emma, I'm chilling, we're cool, like I'm good. So if you think that I could create a course in songwriting from being on one podcast, how do you think that you could create your own podcast about whatever your topic and from there create a course for your peeps? Of course you can. And a lot of times, again, we make great the enemy of good. You're like, well, I'm not the black belt karate master. Who am I to teach karate? It's like, does every student actually need the karate master, or do they need the person who's like here, right? Like, what are we doing? Like, I had those thoughts of imposter syndrome. Who am I to teach this? Ingrid Michaelson should teach this. It's like, well, she wasn't teaching it. And no, I'm not Taylor Swift. We talked about her yesterday, but I did make a living as a songwriter, and I did have a few things to share, and I did want to share it. And so we did, and it was awesome. And I did that class for 2.5 years. We launched it 7 more times. And guess what? That class wound up making $2-3 million a launch after a while, and not from thousands of students. It wound up getting up to like 300, 400, 500 students a class. And it was a $3,000 class after a while because the value was so there. And it crushed. It's actually what allowed me to really just keep being so able to just nurture and nurture and nurture in my podcast, because that class was doing so phenomenally well. And I just started it just like I started the podcast, just messy. But guess what? I don't even teach that anymore. My podcast has been completely replaced by, my music income was completely replaced times like 7 by what has been brought in by all the ways that I've monetized my podcast. And I don't talk about songwriting at all on the podcast. And I don't teach that to my listeners. Isn't that so cool? So number 6, and Colleen, I'm not going to turn to you because I don't want to put you on the spot. Because if your dog is still there, I feel like she's going to be like, what if the dog barks? So if you feel like unmuting yourself, please unmute yourself. Do you want to say anything?
Yeah, I think the only thing I want to just bring people back to again is this fact, like, people were asking Kathy to make this course. They were like begging her to teach it. Literally. And that is so, like, I want you guys to all grasp this, because I think we walk around subconsciously, not even realizing it, with this narrative that things have to be hard. Nobody wants to spend money. Who would pay me for that? And we don't mean to, but that's kind of what we sort of beneath the surface, we think. And the truth is, like, people are craving, right, that opportunity to learn from someone who can show them the way, like more quickly, more efficiently, to have that support, to have that connection. So it's truly a gift when you give your listeners the opportunity to take another step with you. It's not, oh, she's so salesy and she's only doing this podcast because she's trying to get my money. It's like 100% no. It's being generous. It's meeting people at a space where you can help them step into more of themselves. And that's a beautiful thing.
It is a beautiful thing. And you know what's also so good is just to remember truth, right? Like when you just said it's so salesy, it's like that will only stick to you if that's really in your vibration and the frequency that you're putting out. But what's also true is that wherever you kind of hold your resonance, your goodness, your integrity, you will attract people who are in that level of integrity, and they'll feel it, and you'll just be off to the races. You don't need to be for everybody, right? There's going to be a line of people around the block trying to get into the 99-cent store, right? They're never on a short, they're not like short of customers. And there's a line around the block, people who want to go to Whole Foods. And it doesn't make either of them wrong. They're both serving people. They're all adults consenting to go in and get food wherever they want, shoes wherever they want. There's going to be Louis Vuitton for people. Does Louis Vuitton say, I'm salesy, there's something wrong that I'm charging? It's like, no, like Louis Vuitton is selling a thing. You can also go to Ross or Payless and you can get a thing there. No problem. No problem. But don't make the mistake of thinking that there isn't a customer who wants the vibration of the Louis Vuitton, because there is. And don't think that there's not a customer who goes into the Payless store who maybe doesn't get what that's about and maybe wants to throw heat at that, throw shade at that. That doesn't make any of it wrong. It just means stay in your lane, right? Show up, cast a beautiful vibration, be in integrity. And yeah, when you offer people a way to pay you, that is a gift for them. Okay. What we know in the data is that people do not have a transformation unless they have sunk costs, unless there are stakes in the game. If you don't pay to have a trainer, how often do you get your butt to the gym? Okay. If you don't pay for college and somebody else gave you a scholarship, do you know what we find out about scholarships? How many people actually then show up for it, right? My dad paid for it, my this, and what if you paid for it? You paid for that car. You're going to make sure that you keep that car clean. You're going to make sure you're not going to drive under the influence, right? It's different. There's a difference when you have sunk costs, when you have skin in the game. Why would you deny people that? Then you're just going to see people sitting in their resistance. They're not going to move forward. You have to have the courage to give other people the opportunity to pay so that they actually take action and get from here to there. And guess what we've talked about? Even if you're not teaching people how to lose weight or make money, what if you're teaching people how to be happier, 10% happier? Is that not something that's a pandemic, the sadness that goes on in this world, and you don't want people to take action? Careful what you wish for, because if you don't give people a way to spend, then they're not investing with their energy. There is no sunk costs, and they're probably not going to listen and then go integrate it. They're just going to listen and then think that just by listening that they're actually going to do something about it. We have to reframe the way we think, but then take inspired action, or else we live Groundhog Day every single day. So if you're doing this podcast, giving people an opportunity to pay for things is a gift, and it's not about you, it's about them. And I say to people when they're afraid to ask to be paid, I'm like, that's your imposter syndrome. And imposter syndrome is the most egocentric thing that you can spend your time consumed with, because it's your ego that's afraid. If you're thinking, who am I to do this? And oh my God, and I'm this, and I'll be too pushy, and I'll be this, like, stop thinking about yourself and think about the other person. Right? Reach your hand out, just get available, get generous. Do you think that Yale Law School says to, themselves, whatever that means, we're not going to do this. This would be outrageous to charge $79,000 a year for law school? No, they're like, who is stepping up to the gift of spending this money? Who will gift themselves the opportunity to spend this much money on law school? You're lucky. You got lucky to spend this money, right? That's the up level. Don't you make it about yourself, right? But then what does that require? Leadership. You know why people really don't want to charge? They don't want to be on the hook for making something amazing. It's easy to charge less because then you don't have to actually make something amazing, right? Low cost is a race to the bottom. You want to spend more for something, you're going to get the value. All right. So what's number 6? We've got 8 of these. Number 6 is offer a service or coaching. So there are many ways that you can do that. Let's say that you do a podcast about branding. You could then offer logo design. You could then offer to coach people on how to set up what would be their font, their colors that help tell the stories, right? Offering a service and coaching. I'm going to kind of fly through these because boy, do I go off when I go off. Take some time with that. Affiliates. What are affiliates? Well, first of all, do you know Amazon has an affiliate link for you? Do you know that you could literally fund your life if your listeners just bought all of their Amazon stuff using your link? You can get an affiliate link with Amazon and say, hey guys, I love that you love my podcast. If you're on Amazon anyway, buying everything in your life from paper towels to shoes to dog food, hey, could you just do it through my link because I'll get a kickback? Yeah, you're darn right. You know what that can do for you? It's giant. Okay. It's absolutely giant. People like Bill Burr and Adam Carolla and other comics have done that. And they've raised so much money with those affiliate links for charities over Christmas. You have no idea. That is something. But what else? There are people who already have programs. There are people who already have products. They might give you an affiliate link, which is even better than being paid as an ad, because then instead of the cost per million, $25 per thousand, they might say to you, hey, I'm not going to give you the money. I'm going to give you an affiliate link. My friend, not going to say who she is, just in case she doesn't want. I almost did, but I won't. My friend did an affiliate link with a school, and her podcast was about nutrition. And she went to this nutrition school and said, I happen to talk about you anyway. Would you give me a kickback if I affiliated for you, if I talked about your school on the show? And they said, yeah, we have nothing to lose, right? Like, you talk about us, you bring us a client. Absolutely. Well, they said for every one she brought, based upon what the nutrition class cost, they would give her $1,000. No joke. She brought them 306 people in that first year. She made $306,000. And they not only now are affiliating with her, she gets a lot more per person because they realize that she's such an evangelist of this work. She is somebody who's not a doctor. She's not whatever, but she lives this, and she had health issues, and this completely changed her health. She got her period back. Like, a lot of things had happened for her that this helped change. So she can't stop talking about it. She's also she's on the younger side. She's like 28 years old. She has like a really cool following, and they adore her. So you would go to somebody and you would say, I'd like to affiliate for you. And you wouldn't believe how many products and services and classes already have affiliate links set up. And if you were to come to them, they'll say, sure, you can affiliate for us. Is your mind being blown? I hope so. This is where I say to people, what are you waiting for? The day is young. Get up, get out, look at the possibilities. Stop saying there's no money, there's no customers, there's no way, no. Like, show up, open your palms, say, God, use me, let's go. You wouldn't believe how many opportunities are there for you. Okay, and the last one is doing events. You could do events. So you could offer an online event, like a virtual summit. You could offer an in-person event. We've done all of these. You could also offer some kind of a meetup retreat, something like that. I'm going to slow down because she just unmuted. I think she might have something to say. Colleen.
You're so cute.
I hear you.
The beautiful part when you're doing events as well is, I mean, now since COVID, lots of people are super into them virtually. So they don't have to be online, right? There can be a beautiful like online summit that you do where you bring people together. And people are so much more open to that now than they were prior to COVID, right? Because people learned a new way of operating and being. So before, sometimes maybe it felt like, oh my gosh, but if I have to book event space and like pay for it, and am I going to get the people? Like, you can grow into that if you want, right? If that feels like too big, like you can start virtual and then you can go from there.
Yeah. I love these comments. Everyone's like, mind blown, mind blown. Like, great. I want to blow your mind. I do. It feels so good. It feels so good because I am such an evangelist for podcasting because it's literally changed our life. I mean, I shouldn't be apologizing for saying it. Like, I have a Range Rover, I have an X7, I live in a multi-million-dollar home, we're buying a beach house. I took my kids to Blackberry Mountain this year. It was $5,600 a night. And you know why I shouldn't be apologizing? Because this wasn't handed to me. Okay. It took a lot of courage to show up and be able to do this. This was built brick by brick with courage. And B, because there is a idea that you have to choose between being a nice person or having money. Like, somehow money is the root of all evil. That you're either a nice person or you're greedy and you're horrible. How many wealthy people's names are on the bottom of buildings that are hospitals? How many people who are wealthy are jerks? There are some, many. How many people who don't have money are jerks? There are some, there's many. How many people who have no money are kind? Many. Many kind people have no money. How many people who have money are generous and kind, and help women in Africa to have so many. So what are we talking about? It's not the money that we should be ashamed of. It's not the money that should be mutually exclusive. It's integrity. It's who you are. You know what the Talmud says? The Talmud says money is like rain, and whatever it falls on will grow. So if at your core, you're a weed and you get more rain, you're going to become worse. If at your core, you're like a beautiful hydrangea rose bush, you're going to become more. And I would like to say, I'm proud of the fact that that's who I want to be for my 3 daughters. I want them to see they don't have to choose between being kind and poor, or what is that? You could be kind either way, right? You can be generous either way. And guess what? The more of something you have, the more of it you can give away. The more love you have in your heart, you can give that away. You can smile at someone. The more money you have, you could give that away. I give so much money away. And you know what's so cool about abundance? The more you have of abundance, the more you create for other people. It's like planting a cherry tree. You took one seed, now you plant it, now there's more cherries, right? It's like there is just more expansiveness. And it's our job to get out of our ego and stop being in our resistance and say, how much of a resource can I pull into my life? How much more love can I bring into me so that my energy casts more love? How much more money can I receive, which really is about other people? We just talked about that. The more money you allow people to spend, the more you give them an opportunity to grow. But that means you have to be the leader who can hold for them the space so that they actually get accountability and they show up. Speaking of which, it's 10:51. I want to tell you something because I've been getting email after email. My team's been saying, people want to know about what your course is. So I'm going to tell you real fast, and then we're going to get back to what we're doing. And we have 2 more days, I told you, tomorrow. We have guest speakers coming on tomorrow. On Friday, we have a special, more intimate way of hanging out. We're going to hang out on Zoom and we're going to be here. So if you're here, we'll stream it here, but we're also going to be on Zoom as well. So we can have a face-to-face sort of hangout. My producer, Emma, will be there so she can answer more of those tech questions. So we're nowhere near done, but I do want to answer this question. We've been asked, Kathy, what do you do if I want more than these 5 days? And I hope that some of you will walk away from these 5 days and you're going to be like, I learned so many things. I feel elevated since I was there. But some of you are going to be like, I want more. Here's the deal. Here's the deal, Leo. Okay. There is information everywhere. You can get books, you can get YouTube videos. You didn't have to show up for this. There's information in a lot of places. I do think that I gave you a lot of information, but there's information. But what you really, 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 really need is a transformation. You need to take this information and actually use it. You need to actually apply it. You need to actually do it. So my 8-week program called It's Your Turn to Podcast, same name as this challenge, except that it's a full program, is a course. It's not videos that are pre-recorded. I repeat, it's not an online course. It's not go watch videos. It's me and you hanging out every single week. It's not, I like to sell the course and then have somebody else teach you. No, I'm with you, holding you in your highest vibration, calling forth your highest and best leadership, saying, you're doing it this week. I'm keeping you accountable. And every single week we go through deeper content, and then you have an implementation session where you do it. You have accountability. So we go into making sure that we go, remember the other day we went into like social media a little bit deeper, and I said we can go even more into that and everything else. By the end of the 8 weeks, you have had me present with you, teaching you, pouring into you. And then you also have, in addition to me every week, live on Zoom, You have the experience of having the implementation sessions. You're all assigned a mentor. You have other Zoom calls. It's phenomenal. It's phenomenal. And I feel morally obligated to say this with full conviction, because I know that there are so many of you who will show up for this thing, have an actual spark of like, I do want to do this. And then you won't follow through because it's not your fault. It's what the data shows. We don't get crap done unless we're held accountable, unless somebody comes beside us. And also, we need mastery. Like, you can go struggle your way through and DIY things, or you can take with you a mentor, a guide, and say, we're hiking that hill. You're the one who knows where that little fault line is. You're the one who's going to know. You understand, we were in Hawaii. We had a guide. I'm so glad we had a guide, right? Like, we wouldn't have made it back. But instead we knew exactly how to get to the waterfall, and we got there faster, and we knew where the slippery parts were. And he knew what, bugs were going to be on the trail and which things were poison oak. This is important. So another thing you should know is that other people's programs, they don't teach you how to monetize your podcast, and they don't teach you how to create a transformational experience so that your podcast is honestly a work of art. My podcast is not in the top 10 for no reason. My podcast is something where people cry to me and say, this 100% changed my life. And I don't want you to just make a show. When they zig, I want you to zag. I want you to know all the moments to hit. I want you to drop the veil. I want you to drop the ego. I want you to have fun. I want you to let it be easy. I don't want you sweating it out, worrying about things and editing things that don't need to be edited. Instead, I want you to focus on the 3 things that actually matter. And I want you to do it in a way where you then engage people. You pull people close. And I want you to rise and speak. And I want you to feel liberated that you're doing something that's shining a light in a time where we have the greatest empathy deficit in the world. You're creating community. So that's why I'm inviting you. So today we're going to open the doors later, but we've gotten so many DMs. We're opening the doors today. If you go to kathyheller.com/join, that's correct, Colleen, right? You can join me. And you don't just get this 8-week interactive experience. You also will get 6 months with our team, including Emma, who's been podcast producer for me this entire time. She was offered a job at Apple in podcasting, and she turned it down because she said, I'm sticking with you, which is so nice, honestly. It doesn't even make any sense. So she's amazing, and you will have that. And you won't believe what I'm about to say. It's $297 a month, okay? That's ridiculous. You can't afford to not do that. You cannot afford to not do that. So go to kathyheller.com/join. Now, the reason you need to go there today is because there's fast action bonuses, which we do this psychologically to encourage you to take quick action, because God, do we have so much resistance, you guys, when we're like, oh my God, I'm going to make a promise to myself by spending this money that I'm going to do this. Ooh, I'm getting my resistance. What if I'm afraid? What if I don't make a good show? F that. I'm going to do everything I can to convince you to show up in your power and do this. So we have a fast action bonus. 2 things. 1, if you sign up in the next 24 hours, you're also going to get a masterclass I'm doing on the 5 steps to make $5,000 in a month, right? That's a really important class because that's just something you should have. And the second thing is I'm doing a full day abundance manifesting workshop with none other than my very good friend, Sherry Salata, who was the executive producer of a show called Oprah. She was the president of Harpo, and she was the president of OWN. And I don't mean years ago, and she was there for a minute and she was one of them. No, I mean, she was the executive producer, president of Harpo, president of OWN until 4 years ago. She's incredible. She's a partner of mine. She's the person I'm starting a TV show tomorrow. Can you believe it? There's gonna be cameras in my house. I've got makeup going on at 6 a.m. She's a dear friend. She knows a thing or two about making content. She knows a thing or two about showing up and literally setting off an atom bomb of energy in this show called The Oprah Show. She then created a whole network around her. We're doing a 1-day seminar, which you guys get to come to. And it's incredible. And you don't want to miss that. So you're going to sign up for this program and you are going to commit to yourself that this is not something that's on the to-do list anymore. It's on the to-done list. It's done. It's done. So it is $297 a month. That's a payment plan. The program is $29.97. You can pay it up front or you can pay it in a payment plan. And what did I tell you about low price? You can find classes online that are $500 or $1,000, and they're expensive because you're going to pay for videos that are going to sit on your desktop and you're not going to move anywhere. We know in the data that the majority of online classes, no one finishes them. And listen to me real good. Do you think that I could have just shot a bunch of videos and sold them for $500? I would have made so much faster, easier money, but no one would rave about the program the way people rave. The people are obsessed with my program. And it's not just because they're obsessed with me. It's because it's an experience. It's because you actually get into something and then you see yourself doing the work, implementing the work, actually rising up. And your friends will say, what are you doing? Are you doing something different? It's like, yeah, I have an amazing mentor, I have an incredible amount of community around me, and I'm actually taking action. So I'm doing the thing I'm saying I'm doing. That's very different than watching videos. So typically, people don't give you 12 months to pay that because it's not really great business. But I want to make something that's such a no-brainer that you say, how would I come up with $297 a month? I'll go drive Instacart if I need to for 1 day a week so I can start a podcast that would maybe create hundreds of thousands of dollars in revenue or more, depending on how much you're willing to step in and just open your palms and be creative and messy and create community. You can do that. Of course you can do that. There is evidence that you can do that. When does the class start? Not this coming Monday, the Monday after. Tell me in the chat if you've already gone and signed up. If you're signing up right now, let's welcome them in. Let's congratulate you. Colleen, is there anything else you want to say? There's like 16 things you probably want to say because I can't stop talking.
All the things. All of it. It's so beautiful to listen to you. So it's perfect. I want to say for those of you wondering if you're at different points in the journey, there's some of you I know in the group who are just thinking about starting a podcast. There's some of you who already have one. Who is this program for? All of you. So Emma, who is so extraordinary and is podcast producer, she will have a call every week that everyone gets to join. And she's going to guide people through everything you can imagine around tech or editing, what to spend time on, what isn't important, all of the pieces. So if you're really new to all of this space and you're not sure, 1,000,000% you're going to be covered. But for those of you who already have a podcast, look at where Kathy's podcast is. Look at what she's accomplished. Okay, there is so much depth in this program that we go into around connecting with your audience, growing them, getting more visible online, honing your offers, getting the positioning done well on them. So much that is going to help you take what you're already doing to a completely different level.
Yeah. And for anyone who's saying you're confused, so basically this week we are doing this boot camp. It is free. It is my pleasure. Can you tell I'm having fun? It's so fun. And we're not done. We have 2 more days, but because so many people were DMing about like, what's this thing? She said she has an 8-week class. I'm like, I'm going to tell you now, and then we can kind of get that out of the way. And tomorrow and the next day, we can keep going with more content as we had planned. The thing with this class is that you will actually learn. For everything you've learned in this just like very short time, you're going to learn this much more about all of those things. So we're going to be able to go into depth about all of these things. Like today, we can go into depth on how do you create that product, that course, that affiliate. We can go into depth on how we interview, how we ask people to be on our shows. We can go into depth about the tech. So Emma, as she was just saying, who's my producer, is going to be with you every week, and you'll sort of have these like videos and calls from her where you can ask her questions, and it's kind of like be looking over her shoulder as she shows you, here's how you edit this. Here's how you send this message. Here's how you make the show notes for your show. Here's how you really make a classy, gorgeous show. And then I'm going to be there with you, not only teaching you how to podcast, right? It's kind of like you can watch videos on YouTube if you want to learn how to dance, or you can take dance from someone who's a master of that. And she can come and adjust your back and play a certain kind of music and show you what's possible. And there's a difference in the way that you dance. Not to mention, I really, really want to see you actually implement all of the things. And it's almost impossible. I think it's impossible, actually, not almost impossible, for me to teach you every single thing that I know in 5 days. But I do hope that you see and feel this value. And for some of you, you're going to take this and go, I'm going to go do this on my own. I do believe, because of data and the evidence that we've seen, I don't think anyone ever really is able to implement on their own. Everyone has a Jedi, a Yoda in my life, right? I've always had someone come along and say, hey, this is a shortcut. I've already been there. Don't take that route. No, watch out for that guy, right? So there's so much that we can do, not to mention we're going to be doing special things with our community where I, having the exposure that I have, I'm going to be shouting people out who start their podcast on my podcast. So if you don't just want to think about doing a podcast and have it on your to-do list, but you want it on the to-done list, you actually want to do it and implement it, and you want the nurturing and the mentorship, and you want to really learn how to make a gorgeous show that is something that's heard around the world in a different kind of vibration. It just holds a different kind of resonance. Then I want to show you all the different ways that we can go deeper into this. And I want to teach you how to monetize it. And I want to hold your feet to the fire and keep you accountable to do the things I tell you that are going to help you monetize it. And then you will be doing it. And it's amazing. I saw Katya just said, invest in yourself. If your kid asked you for tennis lessons, people are like, no problem, whatever, I'll figure it out, right? That woman, Teresa Greenway, do you know what she was doing to try to get extra money for her kid? And then whatever he wanted, needed, people do it. But when it's for ourselves, but I think to myself, the greatest thing I do for my kid is be my highest and best self. How did that change their life? Forget the fact that they have all the opportunities in the world. They see their mom leading. They see someone happy, because you know what we all want? We want to grow. We want growth. Look at a pond versus water that's moving. Water that's moving, it's electrifying. You can swim in it. A pond that sits and sits and sits gets stagnant. It gets algae. It gets poisonous. Don't drink it. Don't drink that water, right? We really deeply, we know when we hit our head on the pillow at night, we really want to grow. And I don't know that we're able to grow on our own the way that we can grow if you do meet someone and you're like, that's my person. And here's what I'm going to say. If I'm not your person, which for some of you, I am not. Something about me, I know for some of you, it's because no one can be everyone's person. So if I'm not your person, the next person who is, I want you to do whatever you can to be as close to that person as possible and learn from that person and be a part of hearing and strategizing. Find yourself a mentor, right? Get that person. I mean, Tony Robbins, whether you like him or not, just as a fact, he studied under this guy, Jim Rohn, right? There you go. You know, we talked about Oprah a minute ago. Who's her mentor? Maya Angelou. Pretty darn awesome mentor to have, right? I think we forget there are these little clicks of a kaleidoscope that feel like just a subtle difference, but they're everything. And sometimes just having a leader who holds you to your highest and best vibration is everything. And sometimes having someone who gives you homework, but then you actually know that person's going to check and then you do it, and having someone to go through the homework with you, and having the space of people around you who are not complaining, who are not sitting around, but who are doers. Maybe you all then have a collective rise in consciousness and you cross the finish line together. So yeah, just so you guys are clear, the cost of the program, we give you 2 ways to pay for it. You can pay for it in the payment plan, which is $297 a month. And it's an 8-week live experience with me and the coaches and the mentors every single week, plus a 6-month support where we are there. The team is there supporting you, nurturing you, helping you go on each other's podcasts. You get networking out of it. All of that, you either pay $297 a month for 12 months, or it's $29.97. And it's because It really should what does it cost to take one class at a college, which by the way, college, as lovely as it is theoretical. Like it's theoretical. This is like actual. This is me actually doing this business and then actually sitting with you. And we run it much more like a mastermind than a class, right? Because I'm there live. It's not like, here's a video of Kathy, boop, watch it on your own time, boop, boop. It's none of the boop boops. It's like, I'm there. Let's go. Let's call you guys in. And we don't do it like this. We do it on Zoom. So we're like all huddled up. Okay. Love you guys very much. And yeah, it's interesting, right? You're going to see people like there's a comment right now, like this is an expensive course. That's so disappointing. But I'm going to say that I want to create the kind of class that actually is so valuable. And the thing is, if you go to Whole Foods and you want to buy the salmon because it's organic, because it doesn't have the things that are processed in it, that they can then make it cheaper because it's farm fed. I don't want to be in the business of making something like that. But what I will do is create an experience like this one this week, which is free. Boom. And that's what I'll teach you to do. It's either free and amazing, or it's so beautiful and luxury, and it's only for certain people. You're right. But this one this week, I hope you love. And we have so much more to give you tomorrow and the next day. And not everybody's at the level where they're like, I want that kind of mentorship. Some people want to keep spending their time instead of their money and just struggling through it. It'll be another year, 2 years. Maybe they'll never actually see the possibility of having a top 10 podcast. Maybe they'll never actually see the possibility of really creating all these different streams of revenue. Fine, no problem. Not everybody wants it, right? My husband, his dad died. I mentioned that when he was 13, he wound up going to USC Law School, UCLA Business School, UCLA undergrad, didn't have any student debt because he worked his butt off, took the bus till he was like 29 years old. He never mentioned how much money it cost him to go to law school. The kid never mentioned what it cost to go to that business school. He just figured it out. And I think he felt like it was a gift that he got to show up there, that he got to spend that on himself. Because how do you think he invested in his homework when he did that? And for a kid whose dad dropped dead at a very young age and never went to college, it's pretty amazing that he was able to do what he did. And now, because his wife is such a freaking baller, he was able to retire. And now he's doing stand-up comedy. God bless him. God bless him. God bless him. We got to change the way we look at things. We got to change the way we look at what's expensive. Because I will tell you, things that are cheap are really expensive. Because if you go buy something that's going to break, you just wasted the money. If you go buy something you're not going to use, that's expensive. That's $500 too much. That's $6 too much, right? You got to flip it around. In any case, if you want to check it out, you're going to go to kathyheller.com/join. Let's talk about the homework winners, Colleen. Who you got?
Gotcha. All right. So we have Lena Porter, Chris Casabon, and Mary Whitaker. So congrats, everybody.
You just won Beats headphones, a microphone, all of you. Love you. Look at all these people who are, Lori's like, I'm freaking in, Kathy. You're going to be excited. Oh, and by the way, because I have integrity, I pride myself on this. We have a refund period. So if you come on in and you're like, no, you get to leave. Okay. You don't have to stick around. We don't want anyone who's unhappy in this program. So there's no like buyer beware. It's like, if you come into this program and you're like, Kath, not into it, not into you, not into her, not into, no, you can go. You can go. You can get a refund. You don't have to pay for this entire program. Are we hearing it? Okay, so let's go over what's happening tomorrow and Friday. Are there 2 more days? Yes, indeed. Are there going to be more prizes given and more homework? Yes. Today, you're going to see homework with questions like, which of the 8 ways to monetize do you feel that you are drawn to? You're going to be asked questions like, how much would you want to make from a podcast and by the way, if you actually show up and do your podcast, you're going to be able to pay how many times what you're going to pay for this program. Oh my God, and God in heaven. And then number 3, what would income from your podcast allow you to do? How would it maybe change your life? It's completely changed my life. I can't even, it's quantum levels of change, quantum levels. It's unbelievable, unbelievable. To be able to tell your mother who's been living in an apartment, struggling, single mom for years, that you're going to buy her a house is the most gratifying thing in the world. So yeah, it's changed my life. We're going to post the homework in just a little bit. We're going to come back tomorrow. We're going to have 2 awesome guests with us tomorrow who are both people who have monetized their podcasts in different ways. And then on Friday, we are going to be here streaming. But Colleen, do you have the link already or no? We'll post it.
We'll post the link.
You guys the link. We're going to give you a link so that not only could you watch it like this on Friday in the Facebook group, but you could also be with us on Zoom, because we'll do a little Q&A session. And that way I can unmute some people, talk to some people. Emma will be on there as well. It's going to be a fun. We're not anywhere close to done, my friends. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. And actually, I'm really glad that you saw me invite you to my program, because I want you to take notes on that too. That's part of this class, right? It's like, watch the moves, watch the body language, watch the things I'm saying. This is what has to come in to you. It has to, right? It has to, in order for you to create that expansion for other people. But it does require that you are willing to put your own ego aside, your imposter syndrome aside, and just reach your arms out to give people a chance to sort of come and join and come and rise. So I'm loving every second of it. And it's been so fun. And we've got 2 more days of awesome stuff to do. Can't wait. Can't wait. Colleen, thank you. Is there anything we left out?
No, I just want to say, I know you guys can feel this, like when you look at this group and you look at the energy of the space and the people that Kathy attracts into her world, just what's possible for you when you stay in that kind of energy. You just become a different person. It's like, it's so much far beyond even like podcasting and all the incredible, really amazing things. It's just, I don't even have words for it. So it's beautiful.
You know, it's like, we don't know what we don't know. And it's like, I say to people, there's a whole world up here where you don't have to struggle, where you get to be yourself, where it can be easy, where you can, honestly, and people are like, no, that doesn't exist. People are so married to the belief that if I'm making money, it has to be hard. If I'm doing something important, it has to be hard. No, it's so easy. The portal to your greatest expansion is so close. The door is so close that we've been conditioned not even to be able to find it. And that is what people find, I think, in coaching with me. And it's phenomenal to see people like turn that switch. It's like literally so close, you can taste it. And then I want you guys, because I know you're already here, to be the person in 6 weeks and 8 weeks who I'm talking about, like Danielle Silverstein. I want you guys to be the ones who come back and say, that was incredible. I actually was held accountable. She was there. And so I did it. And so I did. And so it was. And now look, right? And how many lives are you changing? And how much have you grown as a leader? And how much have you learned about getting out of your own imposter syndrome? And how much money have you brought in? And then, like Barbara Corcoran said, money is meant to be spent. As soon as you make it, you earmark it to spend on, to hire someone else, support someone else's business, help someone else. We got to get out of this resistance mindset where it's like, there's just not enough. It's all lack. It's like money is an exchange of energy. You give it, you get it back, right? So what are you giving in exchange for? And how much are you willing to receive? And how much can you really receive in terms of knowledge? You know, Colleen, I feel like one of the things I haven't said is I feel so grateful for the interviews, right? All the interviews. It's like I've gotten 4 PhDs listening to some of these great minds. And how much has that changed my life, right? It's just invaluable. And I don't think this is something that we should say like, maybe I'll do it. So no, I don't want to teach a class that's $100 that you kind of kick around and don't even watch the end of. I want you to be a part of a program with people who are at that level of commitment, so that that's your insurance policy, that's your investment, that you're doing this. And then your life is just a different kind of life. It's just making that decision alone is such an up level. Just making a decision to commit to something fully. So in any case, you have mentors. They're all amazing. If you want to go through this homework or anything, or if you have any questions about anything, you should be talking to your mentors. I'll be back tomorrow, same time, 10 a.m. PST, 1 p.m. EST. Go sign up if you want the fast action bonus. It will be gone in 24 hours, kathyheller.com/join. It's going to be good stuff. And I can't wait. We have 2 more days of this challenge. It's going to be really fun. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Thank you, Colleen.